this episode, composing music in 1986 with an Atari 8-bit computer and a Hybrid Arts MIDIMATE. You're looking at my composing setup that I was using circa late 1986 until early 1989. Later in this episode, we'll take a brief look at the sequencing software, some editor librarians I used, and 2 software programs I wrote myself and sold through the classified ads section in Keyboard magazine. First, some history. In December 1980, I received an Atari 400 computer and a cassette data recorder from my mother. I was always telling her that computers were the future, and while she may not have believed me, she did support me. I had learned basic computer programming in high school, and I really wanted an Atari 800, but both were a lot of money, and I thought I had a better chance at getting a 400. Later, I upgraded to an Atari 800 computer and a disk drive. The Atari 8-bit computers have a 6502 processor running at 1.79 megahertz. If you're not into computer jargon, just know that a single core running at that speed is slower than molasses at the North Pole. 6 years later, I moved to Miami and got my first real job. I took my trusted Atari computer with me. I also purchased an Atari 130XE computer and a Hybrid Arts MIDIMATE with the MIDITRACK III sequencing software. The Atari 130XE was a requirement as it had 128 kilobytes of RAM. My other Atari computers maxed out at 48 kilobytes of RAM. Remember, we are talking about kilobytes of RAM here, not gigabytes like we use today, and not even megabytes like we used a decade or 2 ago. To compare that to my current music PC, which has 128 gigabytes of RAM, that is exactly 1,000,000 times more. Not 1 million more, 1,000,000 times more. It's mind-blowing. To put that in perspective, if RAM were dollars and the Atari 130XE had $128,000 in RAM, my music PC would have $128 billion in RAM. It's staggering. I really got into serious composing, or at least as serious as you could get with this hardware and software at the time. This was only a sequencer. It wasn't a digital audio workstation, a DAW like we have today. But you composed on a computer with a screen. Having a screen made it a lot easier to use than a couple of lines of text on a hardware sequencer. I was a starving musician, and while I played a few gigs in the Miami area, it was at this time that I really got into the whole music studio thing. I wasn't really interested in playing live anymore. After work and on weekends, I was doing a lot of composing. But I was also programming editor librarian software for the Atari and selling it through Keyboard magazine to feed myself and buy more equipment. That's a whole other story. This was circa 1987, maybe 1988. If someone has a Keyboard magazine from around that time period, they may be able to find one of the ads that I put for easy software in the classified ads section in the back. I didn't make a lot of money, but it stopped me from starving. Circa 1989, I bought my first Roland S550 sampler and used the Director S sequencing package that ran on the S550. From there, I moved to a Roland MC50 Mark II for a short time, and then back again to sequencing on the S550, because using a screen was so much easier. Then I used some really bad PC programs along with a MIDI flyer interface and an EMU computer audio interface. In 1998, I purchased my first copy of Cubase, Cubase VST 3.6. Then I upgraded to VST 5 before they reset the numbers back to 1 and Steinberg started with Cubase SX1. I've been with Cubase ever since then, with upgrades to new versions, of course. You're looking at the original disc that came with the VST version. This dongle uses a parallel port. Good luck finding one of those on a modern computer. The Atari has been mostly sitting in a box for 30 plus years. I did take it out about 5 years ago to sample its tone generators, and I made some chiptune contact instruments. The Atari 8-bit is well known for games. Its onboard 4-voice tone generation can play some very cool sounds and music. Here are some of the amazing features of the Hybrid Arts MIDIMATE and its sequencing software package, MIDITRACK III. 16 polyphonic tracks, 21,000 MIDI events. Multiple computers can be synced for more tracks and more notes. All 128 MIDI controllers are supported. MIDI controller data filtering, 24 clocks per quarter note accuracy, real-time and step-time editing, track segment looping to save memory, punch in, punch out, move, copy, paste, track transpose, track merging, which retains MIDI channel data, tempos from 2 BPM to 750 BPM. That's a really big range. Sync to MIDI with MIDI clock and song position pointer, SMPTE sync, and many other sync options. System requirements. You had to have an Atari 130XE, a floppy disk drive, color or black and white monitor or a TV with RF or composite inputs, one or more MIDI-equipped devices, and an audio playback system. Now, this was the requirement for MIDITRACK III. If you're using editor librarians, you could get by with one of the older computers with 32 kilobytes or perhaps 48 kilobytes of memory. This information is from the manual, which has 95 pages and a copyright date of 1986. At the start of this episode, you heard a short segment from a song I transferred over from Cubase to the Atari. I had originally wanted to transfer over one of my orchestral cues, but after a few tracks, it was evident that 21,000 MIDI events was not going to cut it. Orchestral compositions with tons of controller data eat up MIDI events like a zombie Pac-Man on steroids. Instead, I chose a pop song I wrote with an 80s vibe. I think it's appropriate here. I stripped off the vocals and I also had to make some other concessions, but it's fine for demo purposes. I transferred the tracks over one at a time because MIDITRACK III doesn't have the dynamic track assignment features that we have in modern software. Essentially, the software is always in record mode. When you press the spacebar, it starts playback, but it's also listening on the MIDI inputs. If you trigger MIDI events during playback, they go into a buffer. It's up to you whether you save them or not. It's actually a pretty cool feature. If you were noodling along with playback and thought you wish you had been recording, no problem, you were. All you have to do is select a track and save the buffer to the track. I can't remember when Cubase added retrospective recording. Maybe it was 2017, or perhaps it was way before that and I missed it. But Hybrid Arts beat them at least by a decade and possibly 3 decades. The tracks in MIDITRACK III are multi-channel. I could have just dumped the entire sequence to one track, but for demo purposes, it looks better on multiple tracks. Let's take a look at the main screen in MIDITRACK III. This is the screen where you'd spend 99% of your time. So starting in the top left corner, we have MIDITRACK III, the name of the software. Next to that, we have copyright, 1985. And then we have the name of the company, Hybrid Arts. On the next line, we have Saved Me. That's the name of the song. And then to the far right, we have a revision number. Every time you save the song, it gets incremented. It starts at 000 and goes up by ones. The reason why this says 79 is I was looking at some other songs, and rather than start with a new song, I just zeroed out the MIDI information and started from there, which is why this says 79. Over here now on the far left, we have the track numbers 1 through 16. And you'll see that track 16 has a little arrow pointing to it. That indicates that this is the active track. The MIDITRACK III software is always in record mode when you press the play button. It goes into a buffer, and then when you stop the transport, if you want to, you can save the buffer. You just need to select a track. Next, we have the track name. You get 8 characters. And next to that, we have a column of arrows. If the arrow is pointing up, it means the track is active. If the arrows are pointing down, it means the track is muted. The next column of information, you'll see only has an E in the last two columns. That means the track has ended. For those particular tracks, these last two tracks here, there isn't any data in those tracks, so they're always going to be ended. For the other tracks, as the MIDI information finishes, E's will start to appear. In the next column, we have a MIDI activity indicator. This MIDI activity indicator tells you how many notes are being played by that track. For instance, an exclamation mark is 1 note. I believe a pound sign is 4 notes. And for other characters, it's going to mean a different number of notes for that track being played. Next up, we have MIDI channel information. Now, like I said, these tracks are multi-channel tracks, or at least they can be. In the case of tracks 1 through 14, you can see that I've forced them to a specific channel. 1 through 9 is MIDI channels, 1 through 9. 0 is 10. And Q, W, E, R, T, Y are channels 11, 12, 13, 14. T would be 15, and Y would be 16. For tracks that have multiple channels on them, you probably wouldn't want to force them to a MIDI channel. You'd want the information to play back on the individual channels from that track. Next up, we have another column here, and you can see it has a percentage. You probably guessed this is the amount of memory that each of these tracks is consuming. For the rock piano, 12%. For addictive drums, 18%. For this nylon guitar lead here, 1%. Doesn't play very long. Now right here you can see there's some space, but there's no information in it. If there were a P here, that would mean that that track is protected. We can protect the tracks so we don't accidentally erase them or overwrite them. In our last column, we have quite a bit of data here. BPM, beats per minute. It's 112 beats per minute. And then we also have our location of our song at this time, and it's on measure 30. The next 5 items refer to punching in and punching out. ST is our start or pre-roll. PI is our punch in. PO is punch out. EN means end or our post roll. Next we have our punch track. Now I did say that MIDITRACK III is always listening and it's always in record mode. But for punching in and punching out, you only want to replace specific information on a track. So you need to tell it which track you want that information to go to. Next up, we have a through channel. And right now there's nothing in there. So channel information would pass through unchanged. If we change that to, say, MIDI channel 5, wouldn't matter what channel you're playing in on from your controller, it would be rechanneled to MIDI channel 5. IT means instant transpose. Right now it says +0, so it's not transposed. We can go down about 7 or 8 half steps and up about 8 or 9 half steps. This last number here just indicates a channel that you do not want to be transposed. For instance, we often don't want to transpose our drums. Next, we have sync options. Currently, it's listed as internal, but this could also say external, EXT. And currently, it says that it's playing the track, so it says play. If the transport was stopped, it would say stop. Here we have an external divider. This is really a cool feature for the time. Some hardware at the time used different numbers of pulses per quarter note. MIDITRACK III uses 24 pulses per quarter note. That's the resolution you're getting. Some external hardware might use, say, 96 pulses per quarter note. So we'd have to set up this external divider so that the two items can correctly synchronize, MIDITRACK III and the external device. With 96 pulses per quarter note on an external device, we'd want to set this up to be 4. We'd divide that 96 by 4, and that would make it 24, and they would correctly synchronize. Next up, we have a metronome. And this is pretty cool for the time. Currently, it's turned off. There's nothing in here, but you have 3 options. You can have an audio metronome, just like a click, click, click. You can have a visual metronome, where the screen pulses in time with the music. And you can have both. Next up, we have P and R, which refers to play and record. And here, this would be the play area filters, and this would be the record filters. V stands for patch change. P is for pitch bend. C is for the 127, 128 MIDI controllers. And then S would be for synchronization. And here we got an S, but I don't have it on here. And this would be for your transport commands, play, stop, etc. Now here we have a patch limiter, and we can set that up for a particular channel. And back in the day, some basic instruments, you could increment the patches. Now what you'd want to do is you'd want to set up how many patches you have on that device. This is our MIDI receive channel. We don't have anything selected here, so it's going to be an omni. It's just going to receive on all channels, but we can select a channel 1 through 16 if we wish. The memory here is the amount of memory remaining. This starts at 100%, and as you use up memory on your tracks over here, it starts to go down. Now, if you add up all of these, it probably adds up to 101%. I read in the manual that it rounds down, so there's a high likelihood once you've recorded a bunch of tracks like I have, it's going to be adding up to more than 100%. Now this area down here looks like it's unused, but information can appear down here. Probably one of the most important things is down over here in the right corner. It's possible to hook up as many as 4 disk drives to an Atari 8-bit computer. They would be listed as drive 0, drive 1, drive 2, and drive 3. Usually in drive 0, which you can think of kind of like your C drive on a PC, that's where you put your programs. And that's probably where you would load off your MIDITRACK III software from. And in the other 3 drives, you could put song disks. We kind of think of them as projects these days, but back then it was just songs because it was just MIDI data and not audio data also. That's pretty much it for this screen. A lot of information on here. It's really quite amazing. And when you compare this to hardware devices of the time that maybe had 2 lines of 40 characters, this was really a step in the right direction. I just wanted to quickly show you my view of the MIDITRACK III software. I don't have an old TV or monitor that I could have directly connected to the Atari. I actually had to MacGyver it and run the signal into an old VHS/DVD player recorder. I don't have a video capture card, so I simply recorded the signal to DVD and passed it through to the 4K flat screen. Then I ripped the video off the DVD. Usually that center monitor would display my Cubase main screen with the timeline. Since I mentioned hardware sequencers a moment ago, I want to compare one of the big daddy sequencers of the time to the MIDITRACK III software. The Yamaha QX1 was one of the big daddy sequencers of the time. For memory, it had 80,000 notes per song saved to a floppy, way more than the MIDITRACK III. It had MIDI in, MIDI through, and a staggering 8 individual MIDI outs. The downside to hardware sequencers at the time were their displays. Compared to computer-based sequencers, the Yamaha just can't compete. It has 40 characters per line and 2 lines of feedback. I've never used one, but I have seen them and they look industrial and capable, at least for that time period.
I believe it was produced in 1984 and stayed in production for about 2 years. If I remember correctly, it cost just over $2,000, perhaps $21.95, but I don't remember exactly. Atari prices had really come down by that time, and for closer to $750, you could buy the software with the interface and the Atari items you needed. Also, sequencing software packages for other computers were becoming more popular. The Mac, the PC, and the 16-bit Atari line, the 1040 ST and Mega STs. Hardware sequencers just weren't competitive anymore. Next up, I want to show you some of the other packages that I either purchased or created myself. Here's the DX editor from Hybrid Arts. This disk would not load, so I can't actually show it to you. Here's the manual, and you can see the pages are kind of offset there. That's how it showed up. I'm thinking maybe they had their kids in the back room assembling these manuals. Next up, we have the GenPatch software from Hybrid Arts. This is a generic patch librarian. There's the disk, and this one would load, so I'm able to give you a demo of this here in just a moment. Next up, we have the manual, and it says that it's a preliminary manual. I don't know if you can see that in the top left corner there. I'm still waiting for my real manual. It's been, a few decades here. Hopefully it's going to show up soon. Next, we have GenPatch from Hybrid Arts. This is the splash screen, and this is the main screen. Here we have 4 options to select from. Let's take a look at transfer functions. There are our transfer functions. We can load from MIDI, dump to MIDI, load from disk, dump to disk, and we can swap the device memory with the computer memory. Next, item B, select MIDI devices. This is where we can load files that we can send to our hardware, telling that hardware to dump its data. Item C, disk functions. Lock file, unlock file, rename, delete, format, basic disk functions. Last but not least, we have GenPatch editor. This is another file, and I abbreviated the loading time on it. Here we can load and save configuration files, and we can edit them. We can actually create our own configuration files that we would send to hardware devices, telling them to dump their data. You get this information from the back of manuals, and it's in hexadecimal. From here, we have to go back to GenPatch, and here we are. Let's look at item C, load from disk. On this particular disk, we only have 2 files. Let's load the Brian set. This is a DX7 dump file. The original DX7 had 32 patches. Here it's displaying it 8 patches at a time. So there's going to be 4 different banks. I went ahead and went through all these 4 banks. I also went to bank E, which would be a 5th bank, and you'll see that there's actually nothing in there. That's it for GenPatch. Next we have Easy Software's Easy81Z. This is a program that I created. It's going to take just a moment to load. Once again, I've abbreviated the load time. This is a splash screen you would see. And from here it would load the main program, once again abbreviated for you. This is the main screen, and everything happens from this screen. we can see we have MIDI, disk, screen, edit, and miscellaneous. The most common options you'd probably use are A and C. A is record and B is transmit, and that's how you get information to and from your devices. You can see you have standard disk items, a few screen items to print information, some editing, and some miscellaneous. And there we have patch generation. And this would create random patches. Essentially, it would mutate patches you already have in the system. So you would load up 32 patches, and then it would start mutating them. And that's what it's doing now. Now you can see it's a pretty slow feature. I haven't slowed this down for you. That's just as fast as the Atari can go. It's doing the best it can. And it has to mutate 32 patches. We can look at some of the other features of the interface here. You can see it says underneath that performances, and you can toggle using item L to get you between voices and performances. And the bytes location over there will list how many bytes it's received or transmitted. There we are. We've switched to voices and back to performances again. Next, we have EasyGen, and this is my generic patch librarian that I wrote. Now, I must say that Hybrid Arts were very nice, and they sent me the MIDI drivers for me to use. They didn't send me any documentation, but I figured it out. While this loads, I can tell you a little bit more about it. One thing that the guy said to me on the phone was, when I called him, was that some of our 8-bit stuff was a little bit flaky. I don't think they minded that I was entering the space because they'd already moved on to the 16-bit Ataris. Here's the main screen. We have receive, transmit, M is receive more, and that was user requested. I added that feature. Speed change. You can change the speed at which it transmits data. The default speed is 26, and that's essentially the way the MIDIMATE was originally set up. But if your device will take information a little bit faster, you can save a few seconds. It doesn't really make a lot of difference. I really just wanted to see if I could do it. Load, save files, directories, printer options. It's really pretty basic stuff. Now I am going to send a bulk dump from my DX7 to it just so you can see. And you can see there's some active sensing bytes there. And then you see it goes rapidly, and that's when it's actually receiving the file. That active sensing is not going to cause any problems because there's a header and an end of file indicator for bulk dumps. Getting a directory, and these are some files that I'd already saved on the disk.
That's just about it for this episode. I'm going to leave you with the last minute of the song. For those of you that were sequencing like this back in the 80s, I hope you enjoyed this trip down memory lane as much as I did. For those of you to whom this was new, I hope you enjoyed learning about the tools many of us endured back in the day to compose on the bleeding edge of technology at a budget price. Hopefully I haven't wasted your time. Take care, and I'll be back in another video soon. Cue the nylon lead.